Picture a group of 30 people somewhere in the grasslands 50,000 years ago. No election, no crown, no army standing behind anyone. And yet, every single day, someone has to decide where the group hunts, when they move camp, who gets the last piece of meat when there isn't enough to go around. Decisions have to get made. So who makes them? And here's the part that should genuinely mess with your head. For most of human history, the answer was almost nobody. Not permanently. Anyway, let's get into it. Because here's the thing. Modern life trains you to assume without ever questioning it. You assume groups need a boss, a CEO, a president, a manager, someone with a title and the authority to tell everyone else what to do. That feels so obvious it barely registers as an assumption, but anthropologists who spent decades actually living with hunter-gatherer societies, the Hadza in Tanzania, the San in the Kalahari, groups whose way of life stretches back the furthest into our shared past, kept noticing something strange. There was no boss, not one permanent person holding power. And it wasn't because these societies were simple or hadn't figured it out yet. It's because they had figured something out. And modern hierarchical societies are actually the weird outlier. Anthropologists call this an egalitarian band structure. And it's not egalitarian in some feel-good everyone holds hands sense. It's egalitarian because the group actively, aggressively refused to let anyone become a permanent boss. If someone started acting bossy, ordering people around, hoarding meat, puffing themselves up, the group had tools to shut that down fast. Mockery, gossip, deliberately ignoring the person, in extreme cases, straight-up abandonment, walking away from camp and leaving the self-appointed leader behind. Anthropologist Christopher Bohm has a name for this: a reverse dominance hierarchy. Instead of one person dominating the group dominates anyone who tries to dominate it. Think about that. Your ancestors didn't just tolerate the absence of permanent leaders, they built social technology specifically to prevent one from forming. So if nobody's in charge, how does anything get decided? This is where it gets interesting, because leadership in these societies wasn't abolished. It was distributed and it moved around depending entirely on what the situation actually required. The best tracker leads today's hunt, because right now, tracking is what matters and their skill is obvious to everyone. Tomorrow, when there's a dispute between two families, it's the person everyone trusts to be fair who steps in and mediates, and that might be a completely different person. The best storyteller runs the evening fire. The person who best knows the terrain leads the migration. Leadership wasn't a job title. It was a temporary role assigned by consensus based entirely on who was actually good at the specific thing the group needed in that moment. You led because you'd earned it right then, not because you'd earned it once and got to keep it forever. Now here's a distinction that changes how you think about leadership completely, and it comes from research by anthropologists Joseph Henrich and Francisco Gil-White. They argue humans evolved two totally separate pathways to influence other people, and they work in opposite ways. The first is dominance. That's leadership through force, fear, and intimidation. Do what I say or face consequences. The second is prestige. That's leadership through demonstrated skill and freely given respect. People follow you because they genuinely want your knowledge, your judgment, your example, not because they're scared of you. And the wild part is, your brain still runs both of these systems today simultaneously, which is exactly why you can respect a strict boss out of pure fear while also genuinely admiring a mentor for completely different reasons. Same behavior, following someone, running on two entirely different evolutionary circuits. In small hunter-gatherer bands, dominance-based leadership got crushed almost immediately by the group's leveling mechanisms. Prestige-based leadership, on the other hand, was welcomed because it cost the group nothing and benefited everyone. But hold on, because there's a specific kind of leader that starts showing up once groups get slightly bigger and slightly less nomadic, and anthropologists gave this figure possibly the most delightfully blunt name in the entire field: the big man. A big man wasn't a chief. He had no formal authority, no enforcement power, nobody was required to obey him. What he had was generosity, deployed strategically and constantly. He organized big feasts. He gave away food, tools, and wealth to other families, building up a web of social debt and loyalty across the entire group. His influence was directly proportional to how much he gave away, not how much he kept. If a big man got greedy, started hoarding instead of redistributing, people simply stopped supporting him, and his influence evaporated overnight. It's leadership as an ongoing performance of generosity, renewed constantly, never guaranteed, never inherited. Your teenage nephew bragging about his new sneakers is doing a distant, confused echo of this. The big man was doing it with the entire group's survival on the line. And now for the twist that a lot of people find genuinely unsettling. Being a leader in some of these societies could be dangerous, in a very literal, very final sense. In several documented tribal societies studied by anthropologists, leaders who overstepped, who tried to convert their earned prestige into real real coercive power, who started acting like a big man's generosity was owed to them as permanent authority, sometimes ended up dead, killed by their own group, not in some chaotic uprising, but in a quiet, deliberate way.